Hello students, this is Mr. Panza going over our main focus question, how do we find fractions of a number? Now in a previous video that you should have seen, I took you through the main steps, 4 main steps to solving fractions of a number. Step 1, change the word of to a multiplication sign. Step 2, turn the whole number into a fraction, forming it by putting that whole number, which in the example I'm about to show you would be 72, over a denominator of 1, because any whole number over 1 is still that whole number. Step 3, multiply your numerators, multiply your denominators. And then step 4, divide your brand new numerator by your brand new denominator to find the fraction of that number. So, for example, you can see I've started with the fraction 7/8. I'm going to take you through the steps and then show you why this works. My focus is typically on this denominator. That's the total number of pieces I would have. Of changes to multiplication, 72, my whole number, turns into a fraction as well when I place it over 1. Now in this one, I've got some pretty significant numbers, so I'm going to use a calculator. I need to take 72, which is a numerator here, and multiply it by 7, which is the numerator right there, and get 504. Immediately when I get that answer, I should write it down as my brand new numerator, and then multiply across 8 times 1, which gets me 8. Now I'm ready for the 4th and final step. Take this large number, my new numerator, which should be right here in your calculator, and divide it by my new denominator of 8 to get another whole number, which is 63. What that tells me is that if I were to break the number 72 into 8 equal groups, and then I took only the 7 groups of those 8, I would get 63 pieces of the total 72. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about and use what I've used so far in class, my example of a pizza. However, if you're currently taking the quiz, I suggest you to stop the video right now. Here's why. I just found out that 7/8 of 72 is 63. What I want you to do is I want you to copy down the exact work that I have shown you for number 1 and number 2, and I want you to set up number 3 following those steps on the previous page. So pause the video now and copy everything you see on the video screen. And then once everybody at the station has copied it, you can press play again and watch and learn why this is the answer that it is. Press pause. In math, when we ask main focus questions like how do we find fractions of a number, it's important to know the steps and the strategies to solve each equation. In this case, I showed you those 4 steps. To find fractions of a whole number, steps 1 through 4. Change of to multiply, turn the whole number into a fraction, put it over a denominator of 1, multiply the numerators and the denominators, and divide your new numerator by your new denominator. But it's also important to put it into practice in real life. And what exactly are we doing when we follow these steps? So let's say you work for a pizza shop, Panza's Pizza Shop. And then a customer, as it says on this card right here, places the order for 1/3 of the total 12 pepperonis that typically come as the topping on a pizza. So they only want 1/3 of it because too many pepperonis isn't going to be helpful. So in this case, what do we have to do? We know that we can set up a math equation and do 1/3 of 12. Follow the steps. Change this word of into a multiplication symbol. Put 12 on top of the denominator of 1. Step 3 says multiply the numerators. 12 times 1 is 12. Multiply the denominators. 3 times 1 is 3. And then divide the large number 12 by 3, which will get me 4. However, why is this correct? Let's take a look at some actual pepperonis. Okay, I'll admit, they're not actual pepperonis. However, there are a full prepped 12 pepperonis that you are seeing on the screen right now. Our main focus is going to be right here, the denominator. It's very dominant because that tells you the total number that we are going to separate into groups. In other words, I'm going to have one group of pepperonis and then a second group and a third group of pepperonis. However, that's only 3 total pepperonis, and we know that the total prep calls for 12. That's what I have in my hand right here. So I need to separate the rest of these pepperonis into these 3 equal groups. So that's 1 in one group, now 2 in a group, 2 in a second group, 2 in a third group, 3 in a group, 3 in a second group, 3 in a third group, 4 in a group, 4 in a group, 4 in a group. So you can see that if I were to separate the total amount of pepperonis that goes onto a large pizza, we have a total of 12, which we already knew that because remember the original question had this as a whole number, 12 total pepperonis, but I can separate them into 3 equal groups of 4 pepperonis, 4 pepperonis, and 4 pepperonis. Now, this customer only ordered 1/3 of these pepperonis. So if you were looking for 1/3 of the total 12, then you could just take these groups and separate them out, put them right back into the ingredients, and see how many total pepperonis are in 1/3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that makes sense. You can visually see why this works. At the same time, when I ran through the math, and I multiplied then divided, I came up with 4 pepperonis in 1/3 of 12 total pepperonis. Let's take a look at 2 more examples with different toppings. Panza's Pizza Shop is filled with awkward orders, including this one. A group calls in and requests a pizza with onions, which typically comes with 15 total onions, which I will show you in just a bit. But this group doesn't want too many onions. They only want 2/3 of the total 15. So we need to group the toppings and find the amount that the customer ordered. So again, I can mathematically do this following the 4 steps that I have shown you. First, change this word of to multiplication. Keep in mind that this whole number 15 is representing a full prep's worth of onions, which means there are 15 total onions typically in a large pizza. I change it by placing that over the denominator of 1. Then I multiply across. 15 times 2 will get me 30. 3 times 1 will get me 3. And then I divide 3 into 30, which means my total onions are going to be 3 into 3 is 1, 3, 0 is 10. That's going to be 10 total onions that I put on this pizza that would typically or normally get 15 total pieces. Let's check and see if I'm right. Again, I take a look at the denominator because I'm going to separate them into 3 equal groups. Here's my first group of onions, then my second group, and my third group of onions. Now I just need to separate the rest that I have left over from my preps into those equal groups. There's second, and each group gets a second onion. Then each group gets a third onion. Each group winds up getting a fourth onion, if this one ever comes off. There we go. Each one gets a 5th onion, and then a 6th onion to top it off, which means in each group, I seem to have 6, which actually is a little confusing because I started with 15, which means I have 6, 12, 18. So let me take away those last 3, 17, 16, 15, which now that leaves me with what I really expected, 4 in each group. I'm sorry, not 4. But I was right the first time, wasn't I? And then when I take those 2 groups together, I kept saying 6, but I really have 5 in each. The preps were correct. So there's 5 here, and 5 here. All I need is 2/3. The customer did not order all 3/3 of these. Instead, we take this away, and we're left with whatever's left that's going to go on the onion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That gives me the total piece. I apologize for the confusion there. I actually had the right answer, and then I messed myself up. That's why checking with math is important. Sometimes if we do it with our hands, we maybe make mistakes. Backing it up with math makes it important. Let's do one more example, and this one I won't mess up on. Panza's Pizza Shop will also put bacon on your pizza if you ask for it. This caller places a delivery order for their pizza to have only 1/2 the total 10 pieces of bacon typically put on the pizza. We need to group them to find the total amount. So again, to find this mathematically, follow the steps. Change the word of to a multiplication symbol. This is my total number of bacon. That's going to represent the total number of pieces of bacon that typically go on to a pizza. I'm going to turn that into a fraction. Then I'm going to multiply across. 10 times 1 is 10. 2 times 1 is 2. And now I divide. 2 can go into 10 5 times. That means half of 10 should be 5. Now, I know that off the top of my head, but at the same time, I can take my pieces of bacon, separate them into 2 equal groups. Here's my first group, and there's my second group. Now, I take the rest of the 10 pieces of bacon and put them into the groups. This group now has 2, and so does this one. This group has 3, and so does this one. This group has 4, and this group has 4. And finally, each group, to get the total 10 pieces of bacon, has 5 in each group. How many pieces did they want? Only 1/2, which means let's negate this half of the bacon and only put this on my pizza for my toppings. So again, it's important to not just understand the strategy, the 4 steps that it takes to solve fractions of a number, but you also need to apply it in real world. And when you are topping things, when you're trying to figure out toppings of numbers, you have to understand how many equal groups you're separating it into, and then how many pieces of a whole there are. I hope this video helps, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.